the time for now? Well, you know, we still have those holes in the back for the pickup system and the cavity cover, but those actually need to happen after this is strung up. And so in order to get it strung up, the one thing that we're missing at this point is the bridge. So we need to cut the bridge to approximate height, and then we need to put on the strings and get it set up. Then the last step will be installing the pickup system and popping the cavity cover on, and then we'll be done. Okay, so bridges. I've used a lot of different materials for bridges, and what I have found to be the most effective way to get a good bridge is to cut it out of a cello bridge. So I'm pretty sure these are 3/4 or full-size cello bridges. This is the one that I cut the prototype of this Cellotar out of, so we're going to be following that. So the logic is that you cut here around the heart of the bridge, because that will give you an open cavity in the middle and 2 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and follow that logic, where the cut is basically right above the side scrolls. As you see, if we cut right above that line, you're going to get an open hole in the middle and then 2 feet. So that's what we want. And then obviously we're going to cut off a little decorative bit there in the middle. So, jigsaw time. That's the decorative part removed. Now, so there we go. That's what you have left over, and this is what you have as your blank. So what you need to do now is string up the instrument. And this blank is like the maximum height that it could possibly be. And you see I cut those feet really nice and flat, so it sits well flat on the top. I really try to make sure to do that if at all possible. And so obviously, if you look at this side on, you can see how much higher that is than the end of the fingerboard. So obviously this is way too high, but you need to be able to measure somehow how much too high it is so that we can cut off an appropriate amount of wood. So we need to get the strings on so that we can figure out how high the action needs to be. So let's talk about strings. So what we're going to be using for this instrument, I found, is the best amount of tension for it. We need a 1/4 scale cello string set. We need the 1/4 scale C string as the low E, and you'll know that it's the C string because it is the thickest one, so it's pretty obvious. So now we need to string this up. Now, not tight at first, obviously, because all we need to do is get it tight enough that it's going to go over the bridge so that we can see how much too high the action currently is. So cello strings have ball ends just like most guitar strings. To load these, our tailpiece is a guitar tailpiece, so it has six notches. So you just don't use the outside 2 notches. So this is going to go over the nut, under the string retainer bar, and through the tuner. And as you'll see, this is standard guitar tuner, and this thick low C from a quarter scale cello goes through the eyelet on the tuner just fine, so it shouldn't be a problem. So I'm going to wrap it around the tuning peg. This is exactly like putting strings on a normal guitar, so if you don't know how to do that, I'm not going to go into detail here. You can find a million different tutorials for it on YouTube, and most of them disagree with each other, so it's always fun. But yeah, how you tune a guitar is there's a lot of personal preference involved there, and kind of depends on who you listen to. So as you can see, I'm just riding that our low E string over the bridge for now, just so I can see that, in the ballpark for the right tension. Now what you should do next is do the other outside string, because that way the bridge will balance and let you have your 2 outside strings, and that'll tell us a lot about the height of the action before we even put on the other 2 strings. So ball end to the tailpiece, over the nut, under the string retainer bar, and through the tuner eyelet. I don't know. I mean, most of the terminology I use is literally made up on the spot. I have no clue, man. I'm just making it up as I go. So, wind it around, under the string, flip over. It fell out of the tailpiece, put it back. If you kind of hold the string like this, it's less likely to do that. Okay, so now what we got here is 2 outer strings . No, that's nowhere near enough. Nowhere near the correct pitch or tension. You have to notch the nut in the bridge before it's going to give us much of anything. But you can hear it is creating sound, so that's a good first step. Can we all take a moment and appreciate how funny it is, how quickly this just suddenly went from a bunch of scraps of junk, and now it looks like an instrument. It's funny how that happens. It's not a big leap. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to check the intonation super roughly, which is play the note at the 12. So that's not even close. Is it further up this way? So what we found here is that correct bridge placement is way back here. Now, 2 things. One, you can get these jazz tailpieces in a couple different sizes, so you can get them for shorter scale length, shorter bodied instruments where they're not as long, and that will back this further down so that the string windings for the cello strings are not over the bridge. However, what you can also do is you can just loop the strings over the top of the tailpiece back under, and that will make it so that you don't get these windings on the bridge if you have this situation. Now, however, I have found that having these windings on the bridge or on the nut, while you would never want that on guitar, and you don't have those on guitar strings, I found does not really negatively affect the tone for the Cellotar, and I actually think it mellows it in a way that might even be desirable. So you can try this either way. I'm going to leave it the way it currently is, where the windings are on the bridge, because I think that might sound better for me. But what we're here for, though, is you can see that the action is very high up here at the last fret. So what we need to do is quantify how high it is. And for that, I'm gonna put a couple of temporary notches in the bridge, which will go away because we're going to cut the top of the bridge off here in a minute. I'm going to put a couple temporary notches in there that are going to let us set these strings the correct spacing, which they're not currently. So I'm just taking a little file here. There's many different shapes of file, and they all have different benefits. You kind of just have to try out and see what you like best. But I think this one's triangular, and it's honestly a terrible file to be using for this. But I just need to get us in the ballpark. I also have this round file, might work better. I'm just trying to get a notch in the bridge here that the strings will hold on to, so that I can see what height strings are off the bridge when they're spaced out correctly. Alright, so right there, I can see that my low E string is a mile off the fretboard, but my G string isn't that far off. It's already kind of in the ballpark, honestly. It's a little high. One thing to note is the action on this is going to need to be higher than on a normal guitar, because when you bow, it displaces the string downward and gets you in trouble. You also do want the high E string, you also do want the low E string higher up off the fretboard, because it displaces more. This is how big and slack it is. So what I have determined is it looks like the right ballpark is going to be removing about 3 millimeters off the entire thing. So my ruler here, 3, I'm just going to mark distance all the way along the entire bridge. We're going to cut this line, stick it back in, and see if it looks right. So what I'm going to take some scrap wood, and I'm going to hold the feet with it, and then I'm going to clamp it down out to the sides where I can clamp it a lot more firmly and snugly, and then it should hold those feet to the proverbial fire. So it isn't a thicker piece. Here we go. Now this is pine, but because it's so much thicker, it's a lot more rigid. So it's going to give us more of the results that we're looking for. Whereas the oak, though stronger, was so thin that it's just going to flex all over the place and not hold the piece very well. No, for the record, I've never done this before. I'm just making this up as I go, like I do with most everything. So, don't be afraid to experiment, invent, try stuff. Because I didn't do that, Cellotar wouldn't exist. It's literally just been a series of me improvising things and them being terrible. And then improvising better things. Okay. That looks pretty firm. Let's try again. Alright, that worked. I honestly feel like working with wooden instruments is largely just figuring out how to clamp stuff. So much clamping. Now that we've cut that bridge shorter on top, we can go back, pop it back under here. See how we're doing. Great. So, one thing I mentioned was not using the two outside lanes of the tailpiece. But I'm looking at this and I feel like where these are going to line up, I might actually want to use the two outside lanes instead of the ones a notch in, because they look like they might align better. So use your judgment on that. Trying to just get the straightest line you can out the tailpiece over the bridge. So the less you have to use the notches to reroute it, the better things are going to naturally line up. Alright, so I've moved the strings to the outermost notches on the tailpiece because it looks like it's going to line up better where I want them to sit on the bridge. So always be looking to see if there are ways to improve what you're trying to do. So to me, That's better because I only have to push them in a little bit as compared to a lot. These little screws on the tailpiece are adjustable to a certain extent, so just use those to even out the tailpiece so that it's more perpendicular. You have to cut notches in both the bridge and the nut. So how do we do that? Well, the best way is to use a file that has a really narrow edge. Doesn't matter which side that narrow edge is on, but you just want a narrow edge. And then for the wider strings, you're going to want a larger round file. So I don't have my favorite files. I think they were sold in the yard sale, like most of my possessions I launched during this build. So I have a couple of round files and this triangular one. So triangular one has the smallest edge, so I'm going to start there. So this high G string we want as low as possible all the way out to the edge of the bridge. So I'm just going to put a notch right there, all the way out at the edge of the bridge. And then I'm going to put that back in there. I can feel that the string has seated in there very nicely. It's not going anywhere. Now, this low E string, it looks like it's going to need to be filed a lot lower. But once again, like I said, you want it to be higher up off the board because of how much it displaces when you bow it. But so first off, I'm going to find a spot where it's well inside the outer edges of all the frets at the nut, and then I'm going to file a notch in the nut for it. So I'm using my thin file, my triangular file, to get the initial slot. This is a really wide string, so then I'm going back with the round file to widen the notch. And it's probably not wide enough, but I'm going to call it good for now. And the high G string, you can see it sort of found a spot in the nut already. I'm going to scoot it out just a little more so I get some more space between the strings. And so this is how I recommend you do this. You find the outside points where you want the strings to sit, just relative to the edge of the frets. So once you determine where the outside strings should sit based on how wide your frets are and where they sit, then your inner strings are just a matter of evenly dividing the available space. Okay, so I got my high G string in good shape, but low E is going to need either a real big notch. Yeah, we'll just do a big notch. It's going to be pushed a little further in. So I'm just going to put it where I think it should be visually based on the edge of the frets. And then I will carve a notch into the bridge. Sorry, you can't see that very well. So I'm starting with the triangular one, like I said, because it's nice and slim. Now take the round file, widen it since this is a big thick string. And the alignment looks good there. But it's fighting me because of the string position. So I'm actually going to move. The inside one is good because of the curvature of the bridge. The high G seems to be doing what I want it to, but this guy is fighting its intended position on the bridge. So I'm going to move it back in to the next slot over in the tailpiece. And that feels a lot better. See, if in the tailpiece it's coming from slightly closer to the center line, because of the curvature of the bridge, it kind of locks better into the notches you make for it. So it's pretty good. Alright, so now we're at the point where instead of just arbitrarily tuning to whatever, we need to tune up these strings to the actual pitches that they're going to be at. So, just getting a relative guitar tuner app. Okay, so you can see now that we are at our actual pitches, it's behaving differently than we expected. So I'm going to move the high E. Now, okay, so two things. One, I can tell that the slot for the high G string is too low on the bridge because it was bottoming out because I went up the neck. Now, as you put tension on the strings, though, the neck will bow up some, so your action will get higher as you add the other strings on. It won't get lower, so bear that in mind. So this guy seems pretty happy sitting on the bridge with no notches, so I'm going to leave that there for now. Put the other strings on and then adjust as necessary. So once all the tension is on there, like I said, the neck will be bowed differently, so we need to adjust based on how that behaves. Alright, so I'm just guessing about which notch the tailpiece is going to be best for the A string. Once again, if it's trying to jump out of the slot I want to put it in too much, I might move it over to a different position. You just have to try and see where it's happiest. This is going to live somewhere over here. So it's sort of between those two tailpiece positions, so I don't really know. I'm not really sure where it should be. Let's see what we get. So once again, when we've established those outer strings, then the two innermost ones really are just a matter of evenly dividing the remaining space. You know, and based on how you build your fingerboard and how everything your cutting and sanding works out, you know, your neck may be a little wider, maybe a little narrower. It's hard to say. So you're gonna have to adjust during this initial setup process based on how things shook out. Alright, so I'm down here looking at the nut, and I am looking at where the strings fall to try to get an even spacing on all four strings. So I'm just holding them in place to see where the notches need to be. And as I determine that, each of them, just put the notch in place and check it. Looks like it's a little too far over toward the low, so I cut it a little deeper, a little further over. And at this point, I'm just trying to make these deep enough that the strings stay. Oh, and see, this A string just kept jumping out of place, and I was like, why are you doing that, bro? Didn't go under the string retainer bar, which is why it's there, guys, because without the string retainer bar, these things really tend to jump out of that nut really badly. So I'm going to slacken both of these, pull the ball ends off at the tail, and refeed them under the string retainer bar. And you'll find they're behaving a lot better at staying in that nut. There we go. You're so naughty. I didn't know why. Why were you being so naughty, string? Why did you not want to stay where I put you? Oh. Now we know. Now we know. So yeah, they're gonna seat a whole lot better now that they're going under that string retainer bar. Killing me. Okay, so I'm just bringing these back up to tension. Now that I've got them under the retainer bar like they're supposed to be. Now I'm going to try to bring all four of these up to pitch. So, word of warning, in the past I tried to use viola tailpieces because I thought they looked cooler, but problem is viola tailpieces cannot handle the tension of the strings on this instrument. I'm not sure why, which is why we have a guitar tailpiece. In the past, I have used gate latches from Home Depot and drilled out holes to hold the ball ends. Those work great too. But it has to be something steel, has to be something strong like that. Cannot be pretty wooden viola tailpiece because it's going to break like a mofo. And in my case, on the way to a gig, and then you're going to have to find a violin shop in the town on the way to the gig, and then it's just going to break again after you deliver it to the client you were building it for, and then he's going to get super mad and hate you and never talk to you again. True story. So learn from my mistake. Don't use classical instrument tailpieces. Go steel. Guitar or DIY. No classical instruments. So as you can see, what I told you was going to happen did happen. The neck bowed more, and so our high G string, which was fretting out, we were hearing a fret buzz on before. That's gone away now because of the because the neck bowing up from the tension on the strings. So we got evenly divided spacing at the nut. Now I just need evenly divided spacing at the tail. So, same story. You look at it, say, okay, where are we, where does this need to go? Looks like that one goes there. Yep, pops right into place. And this guy is going to go here. This file, I'm literally just rubbing it back and forth along the where I want the slot, and it cuts it out. That one feels like it might, yeah, that one's going to want to jump. So I think I'll move that string. Well, no, it looks a lot closer to that line than if it were in the other one, so I'm just going to cut this out deeper. If you have a string that won't behave, just cut the slot deeper and it won't go anywhere. Okay, so it's getting close to being a playable instrument. Let's bring everything back up to pitch again. We have our slots cut at the tail, at the bridge, your slots cut at the nut. Now your pitch is going to keep dropping as the neck bows and everything settles, so you're going to have to keep tuning back up to pitch over and over for a while. It also helps to abuse the string a little and then bring it back up to pitch. Alright, so this is basically an instrument now. E minor, G, this is the top 4 strings of the guitar, E, A, D, G.